Alexander Alexievich, good afternoon. It has been exactly 2 months since we met here, and I have instructed you to organize work in the Kursk region. The situation there is very complicated, and the most important thing I asked you to pay attention to is to contact people and clarify the concerns, the problems that people face, and there are really a lot of problems there. This is the most important solution to all the pressing issues that people have faced. Let's start with this, and then I see from the documents you have prepared that there are other issues and issues. The current plan and the long-term one, more so distant, but also very important. Please. Yes, good afternoon, dear Vladimir Vladimirovich. Indeed, the most important thing for us is people and their problems. And I, along with my colleagues, try to be as open as possible, to be in constant dialogue. In order to determine the list of problems that people are primarily concerned about, on their own initiative, we created a coordinating council, which included initiative groups from each of the cities and districts. We have 9. And all the problematic issues raised at the meetings. And in addition to the coordinating council, I meet with people on a regular basis and gather them quite often or go out to them for meetings. We have already put all these issues on paper today. This list is not exhaustive, but what is important, the consideration of them, the search for solutions. The development takes place with the participation of people. There are 54 such problematic issues in total. Some of these issues have already been resolved. Well, let's say that just today the deputies of the Kursk Regional Duma adopted a bill, already a law that has not been introduced, which provides for the right of a citizen to return a land plot to him after he has implemented a certificate. The fact is that today, Vladimir Vladimirovich, when a person implements a certificate, the state takes away from him the lost structure or its remains, more precisely, for which the compensation certificate is being issued. And the land plot is located under it, since these are inseparable goals. Yes, we cannot change this federal norm, this procedure, but we can grant this land to a person again, provide it for free use. For the purpose of housing and communal services, individual housing construction, for a period of 6 years. During this period, a person builds a house there, despite the fact that he has implemented the certificate. He already has other housing. As soon as he registers this house, he gets this plot for free, his property. I call this just one of such questions. There are a lot of them, those that are being solved. There are issues that, Vladimir Vladimirovich, it is difficult to solve. And I would like to report to you one of the most frequently asked questions by people right now. We are talking about compensation for the loss of property. Thanks to your decisions, enough funds were allocated from the federal budget, and 112,000 people received a payment of 150,000 rubles from us. This is not the only measure of support, and here I want to say a big thank you. Many thanks to colleagues from the Russian government for their great attention, for unprecedented measures of assistance and support to the region, and, of course, first of all, to the residents. But the 150,000 that people received a few months ago have already been used by them in many ways. And they rightly raised the question of what certificates are, and here, in accordance with your instructions, we ensure the continuous issuance of certificates to everyone who applies with this. But the certificate does not provide for, does not allow people to direct funds for housing improvement. In other words, we are talking about rural houses, private households for the restoration of personal subsidiary farms. Unfortunately, many people have lost livestock, poultry, and agricultural machinery. And these are the people who have worked for generations on earth. These are villagers, these are farmers, these are honest people for whom work on the land is simply an integral part of their lives. And it seems to me that the question is really raised rightly that the amount of this payment of 150,000 should be increased so that these funds could be used to equip new housing or housing where people have returned, to restore their personal subsidiary farms in the form of agricultural machinery, in the form of livestock and poultry. And it would probably be reasonable and fair to bring these funds as people return home or as they implement the certificate. Mr. President, I would ask you to consider this issue here, because it seems to me that this is really fair. And here you have more documents about the restoration as a whole, that's borderline. Yes, Mr. President, you spoke about this during a direct line, during other speeches, that we will definitely restore the infrastructure that our enemy destroyed, and people are very much waiting for this. We understand that today, for obvious reasons, due to the fact that there are both military operations, and our wars heroically liberate the Kursk land, it is impossible to start restoring the lost infrastructure right now, just as it is impossible to calculate the amount of costs now, at least because we physically have not yet completely liberated all of our land. But it seems to me that it is also very right, given the scale and given the seriousness of this challenge, to consider the possibility of making some kind of decision to restore infrastructure in the Kursk border region. To do this in parallel with the decisions that I have reported to you about earlier, with the opportunity to direct people, get additional funds, and direct them to home improvement, to purchase or, more precisely, to renew private housing. And then it all organically unite with each other. People are not just returning, they are returning to those settlements, to those villages, cities that are being restored in parallel. And then they really want to live on their land. I will tell you from meetings with people that the vast majority, of course, want to return home. People are patriots of their small homeland. I asked to consider such a possibility of making a decision on the restoration of the social and economic development of the Kursk border region as a whole. It is clear that we will not solve this with the help of the regional budget. Moreover, all the priorities are related to helping people in difficult situations, and we direct all the main funds there. Alexander Alexeyevich, the first issue that you raised is the return of land plots. In case a person has received certificates for housing. I know that today the Regional Duma takes the appropriate decision, according to which quite recently, deputies unanimously adopted and supported such a decision, by the way. It is very important that we do not have branches for political parties in the Kursk region. We have absolutely consolidation of all political forces. A mechanism was proposed, a corresponding bill was introduced, according to which a citizen who was seized by the state a land plot, together with a destroyed structure on it, then this plot gets back, but not immediately into ownership, but through gratuitous use, and builds a house there for 6 years. After that, this land plot becomes his property for free. I can justify why I spoke about this approach and why the deputies unanimously supported it and, in fact, the people themselves agreed with it. The logic is clear to me too. In order that these areas do not stand idle and are not overgrown with lobuha, but that they are used. Of course. Moreover, if you support approaches to restoring the border, restoring the infrastructure destroyed by the enemy, then all this will be organic. Here the state restores what was destroyed by the enemy: roads, social facilities. People are building nearby here. I agree, the logic is clear. Nevertheless, yes, and it complies with the law. Nevertheless, the situation is still unusual, and I would consider it possible to return the land to people as property. Well, I repeat the logic. I understand the legislators, so that it does not stand idle. You can simply condition the return of this land to ownership with conditions the use of this land for other purposes, but for a certain period. But in fact, this decision is quite justified at the level of the regional legislator. If you are in contact with deputies and with people, you come to a different decision about immediately returning ownership of this land. And this will require some decisions at the federal level, including at the level of regulatory regulation. We will do this, and we will certainly meet people halfway. This is the first one. Secondly, as for the borderland restoration program, I totally agree. Such an instruction will be given to the government, and I ask you, together with colleagues from the government of the Russian Federation, to work out this program for the restoration of the border area. We will consult with colleagues on this topic in the near future. And for its part, the government will also make an appropriate proposal. And finally, the most sensitive issue is additional compensation for the loss of property. They called the number of these people 112,000 people, who have already received 150,000. I also agree with you that, of course, this money is not enough. The government's task is to work out all these issues right now, tomorrow, in the coming days, and additional decisions will be taken. Vladimirovich, thank you very much. I am convinced that this is absolutely fair. And people, many of whom have lost what they earned, and made over the years, of course, need a very special attitude to themselves, a very special approach. Thank you very much for this decision. Undoubtedly, together with the government, together with other colleagues, we will work through all these decisions, as well as decisions on the program. At the same time, according to the program, Vladimir Vladimirovich, I would believe that it would be right to start working out its parameters, even without waiting for the final liberation of our entire territory, and the opportunity to start work there, so as not to stand there any longer, not to waste time on additional actions, so that as soon as it would be possible to go there already, it would be safe, because safety is the main priority. Everything was already prepared for this. If it were possible, in the list of those appeals that I have submitted, there is also an appeal with a request to instruct the Russian government to prepare such a program, the parameters for it, and approve the main approaches already this year. This is exactly the current year. We need to start doing this right now, and I will ask the government to prepare this program, of course, together with you and your team, which is currently working in Kursk. And, of course, together with the residents, because, as you have always stressed, it is absolutely true that people are the main thing, and the only one who evaluates our work. Who are we working for, in fact? And therefore, all decisions should be made. And that's how we try to act. I hope that you will continue your work in direct contact with people. That's exactly how I intend to act. And here people should see and understand what the authorities are doing. And not just to see, but to participate directly in the process of developing and forming and implementing further decisions. If I may, I would like to raise a few more questions related to how we can further implement these decisions. And, in particular, I mentioned that certificates are continuously being issued. Everyone who claims it, everyone who makes a request, receives them. But the problem is that the volume of housing under construction in the Kursk region today is much lower than the needs. We have made calculations. We understand that those who are entitled to certificates, those who will receive them today, based on the volume of construction, simply do not physically implement them on the territory of the region. In this regard, Mr. President, what would I suggest and ask you to support? Together with the House, together with the Ministry of Construction of Russia, we have worked out the possibility of implementing a program, first of all, for the construction of low-rise cottage settlements, residential housing settlements provided with some kind of infrastructure, including social This is also important because those of our displaced people who are not ready to wait for the opportunity to return home and want to implement the certificate today are not always ready to buy housing in the city. While the bulk of construction is going on in the Kursk agglomeration, our approach, our proposals, will allow us to start implementing and developing the districts of the Kursk region. And here the key tool could be considered the introduction of preferential mortgages, well, by analogy, as it is, for example, already operating in the Far East today. Good suggestion. We support it.